Hey guys, Ed over here at FICM Repair. Happy Saturday to you. So, all these videos, if you follow me, there's quite a few of you. You've heard this before, at least some of it, maybe not all of it. So just hang in with me if you could. This gentleman writes, is it true that a bad alternator can cause the FICM to fail? Yes. Yes. Absolutely. The stock alternator is stupidly too small for the application. So all you need is a functioning alternator in your PowerStroke 6.0, but you want it to function for more than a day or two, for more than a minute or two. And what happens is right after the truck starts, the glow plugs are still running. And that's a problem because the electrical draw is absurd, right? It's like a 230 amp drawdown on the charging system combined with everything else that's going on for as long as 2 minutes at 0 degree oil. So if it's 2 minutes at 0 degrees, a minute and 15 seconds at 30 degrees, 45 seconds at 50 degrees, like half a second at 90, who even cares? And of course, we're talking about Fahrenheit here, to be clear. But batteries last as a direct result of what's asked of them. So you're drawing down the battery something fierce by running your stock too small alternator. And of course, all your FICM is an amplifier with a brain. And the number one way to kill any amp is inadequate supply side voltage. But adding fuel to the fire is this magical thing called AC ripple current. So what happens is the stock alternator is a 110. And it does 75 amps at cold idle. Now you might be like, oh, I've got that bigger, badder 140. Well, the 140 does 85 amps at cold idle. Big whoop. Or you might say, well, I'm running dual alternators. I'm good here. I've got a 140 up top. It does 85 amps at cold idle. I'm running a 120 down low. It does 78 amps at cold idle. 85 plus 78's not that far away from 230. I'm good. Except that the Ford engineers won't allow both alternators to run at the same time right after the truck starts because they know that the wiring can't hang. And so it's a little trip to the lottery, a little Russian roulette, as it were, every single morning when you start your truck, which alternator gets to serve the primary purpose. And the secondary alternator only kicks in if the draw is still there after the glow plug shut off. So like if you've got some Bama Jamma stereo, you're running an inverter, you're running a plow, that kind of thing is going to cause both alternators to kick on. But generally speaking, no, all that secondary alternator is a liability. And like this alternator here that's featured here, this 240 amp alternator, it does 190 at idle, so by itself, it does more than your two alternators combined could ever do. Besides, there's a technical service bulletin that we can send you that's written by Ford that talks about how to convert from a dual to a single. Well, why do you think Ford published such things, right? They publish such things because they know that that the dual alternator setup was a design disaster, right? They shouldn't have done it. And yet they did. And like, why did they? Oh my goodness, right? And so we know all of this stuff. And so because we know all of this stuff and we know all the heartache and difficulty associated with all this stuff, we know that converting to a single larger alternator is just better. And this is even, underscored more by the fact that International's version of this motor, the VT365, don't you know, came with a much larger alternator than Ford ever gave us poor little stepchildren. And so probably 1 in 300 or that number, something like that, of FICMs that come into us for repair come to us from Internationals. And the only difference is the size of the alternator. So even if you live in a Miami or a Houston or something like that, right? Even if that's you, recognize that, so you guys don't know what cold weather is because you're smarter than us here in Iowa, right? Recognize you still have 30-degree startups. Of course you do. Down in Miami. Yeah, you do, right? Or down in, Corpus or something. Not every day, but yeah. So if that's you, if you're a Miami guy, if you're a Southern Arizona guy, whatever, Southern Texas guy, or gal, no disrespect meant. Probably our 185 amp is fine, but if you live in someplace that gets chilly or you have a penchant to travel to colder climates in January because there's things wrong with you, just saying, if that's the case, you would benefit from our 240 amp alternator. And so that 240 amp alternator that does 190 at cold idle, and by the way, we got bigger too. We got a 320 that does 250. You got a 400 even. I mean, oh my goodness, Lions and Tigers and Bears, oh my. But recognize that the more of the 230 amp draw you can cover, the better off you're going to be. Now, am I a fan of our 320? Not for most of you. The juice isn't just worth the squeeze. The Midwest kid in me just can't. I mean, it's like a $200 and almost $300 bump in price to go from the 240 to the 320. And you're like, well, those two alternators are pretty similar. Why the crazy number? Why the crazy difference in price? Recognize the spread that those alternators have at idle. Because 190 to 250, so that's a 60 amp spread at idle. It's dang near what the stock alternator can do, and that's the difference between these alternators. Holy buckets! But if you can swing it, sure, the 320 is now you're not drawing down the batteries at all, and right after the truck starts, you're golden. But can a bad alternator kill a FICM? To get back to the question and get back off my little tangent squirrel shiny, the answer is yes, and it's because the stock alternator. Any alternator in one of these diesels, actually, because diesel alternators tend to be ridiculously undersized. It goes from I think I can to I thought I could, and the bummer is the alternator is still charging, but it's bad, and that's the thing that you have no way of knowing. So what happens is there's this magical thing called AC ripple current, and AC ripple current causes problems, and so what happens is, when you have more than like 100 milliwatts of AC ripple, it freaks out, it fries the electronics. Not just the FICM, by the way. We repair, ECMs and instrument clusters too, and they also have their own level of susceptibility to this. So if you've got anybody that's got more than like at 130,000 miles, just on age alone, I'd be looking at it, but at 150, abso-freaking-lutely, it's in your best interest to get a different alternator up in there, and obviously it makes a difference. It makes a whole lot of sense to get a properly sized one as long as you're up in there. Now, do we carry a 140 amp alternator that does 85 amps at cold idle? We sure do, and it does, and it's $225, right? And it's just on our site. You can find it on our alternators page. But is that my favorite? It's not. Now, if you're going to be selling the truck, do I think you should buy that one if your alternator's bad? I do, right? $200? Yeah, take my money and probably don't spend the money on this. The problem with going with the 240 amp alternator is that it necessitates cabling, because the charge wire on the back of the alternator is only an 8 gauge, so it's 16,500 circular mils. Our cable kit that just sits on top of that cable is 105,000 circular mils, so it's like 6.5 times more copper goes through a fuse block and a fuse, and another cable of the same size, 1/0 by the way, continues onto the positive stud of the passenger side battery, and then the negative is the exact same way, right? The negative goes ahead and says, yep, here we are. So we know all of this. And because we know all of this, now it's like, okay, it's not just the $75 spread between the alternators, because at present time anyway, with present pricing in late September 2025, the 185 amp goes for $449, and this 240 goes for $525. And you're like, well, hold on a second, the 240 does half again more at idle, 190 instead of 130, and $75, take my money, except the cabling cost, right? And so it's like, ugh. So the cabling that you desperately require is over $200, and now all of a sudden the spread is not just 75; it's like pushing 300, and it's like oofta, right? So how bad do you want that? I don't know. How long do you want your batteries to last? I can tell you the national average for batteries lasting is 2 years. I get 7 years out of my batteries across six liters. It's not that I'm running a better battery; it's that I'm running a bigger alternator. The smallest alternator on any of my rigs does 190 amps at cold idle. And so, of course, they last longer, and batteries are not inexpensive, right? For batteries, see Sam's Club, see Costco. We've talked about this before, but you could also buy an Odyssey battery from our site. It's unbelievable. I got a set of Odysseys running on my Excursion that are like 13 years old, and they still test out equivalent to brand new. Holy buckets! But they're stupid money. So what do you want to do? I don't know. But back to the question at hand: can a bad alternator cause a FICM to fail? The answer is absolutely. Alternators, batteries, grounds, bad FICM relays, and somebody cranking the crap out of the FICM. Those are the things that cause FICMs to fail. So when you're coming into winter, if you live in a northern climate, make sure your batteries test out at least 800 cold cranking amps. In a southern climate, make sure they test out at least 700 cold cranking amps, and that way there's no problems. If you have any questions at all, 515-897-4459, or just sales@FICMRepair.com, or just hit the contact us link on the site. All right? Thanks very much. I appreciate you. Thanks for listening. And anything you need, we got you. From ball joints to crate motors, we can hook you up. Okay? FICMRepair.com. We're all in this together. Thanks for listening.